Venezuela. Hours after they looted and set fire to a National Guard command post in this sun-baked corner of Venezuela earlier this month, a mob infuriated by worsening food shortages rammed trucks into the smoldering edifice, reducing it mostly to rubble. The incident was just one of numerous violent clashes that have flared in pockets around the country in recent weeks as Venezuelans wait for hours in long supermarket lines for basics like milk and rice. Shortages have made hunger a palpable concern for many Wayuu Indians who live here at the northern tip of Venezuela's 1,300-mile border with Colombia. Had been deployed to stem rampant food smuggling and price speculation, which President Nicolas Maduro blames for triple-digit inflation and scarcity. But after they seize contraband goods, the troops themselves often become targets of increasingly desperate people. "What's certain is that we are going very hungry here and the children are suffering a lot," said Maria Palma, a 55-year-old grandmother who on a recent blistering hot day had been standing in line at the grocery store since 3 a.m. before walking away empty-handed at midday. In a national survey, the pollster Consultors 21 found 30% of Venezuelans eating 2 or fewer meals a day during the second quarter of this year, up from 20% in the first quarter. Around 70% of people in the study also said they had stopped buying some basic food item because it had become unavailable or too expensive. Food supply problems in Venezuela underscore the increasingly precarious situation for Mr. Maduro's socialist government, which according to the latest poll by Dataanalysis is preferred by less than 20% of voters ahead of December 6 parliamentary elections. The critical situation threatens to plunge South America's largest oil exporter into a wave of civil unrest reminiscent of last year's nationwide demonstrations seeking Mr. Maduro's ouster. "It's a national crisis," said Marco Ponce, head of the Venezuela Observatory of Social Conflict, noting that unlike the political protests of last year, residents are now taking to the streets demanding social rights. The non-profit group recorded 500 protests over food shortages during the first half of 2015, 56 looting incidents and dozens of attempted lootings at grocery stores, pharmacies, and warehouses. Even delivery trucks are frequently targeted. "If people aren't outside protesting, they're outside standing in line for goods," Mr. Ponce said. The unrest is a response to dramatically worsening living conditions for Venezuelans as the economy reels from oil slump following more than a decade of populist spending that left the government broke. In past years, when oil prices were high, Venezuela's leftist government flooded markets with subsidized goods ranging from cooking oil to diapers. It gave citizens in border towns like La Cr not only access to cheap supplies, but also a source of income as many people trafficked products including nearly free gasoline to neighboring Colombia, drawing handsome profits. With the government now struggling to pay for imports, there is less inventory to go around. In recent days, Mr. Maduro upped the ante by ordering troops along the border to seize contraband, deporting hundreds of Colombians whom the government blames for smuggling and shortages. Armed soldiers monitor supermarkets as part of an effort the president calls Operation People's Liberation. More than 6,000 alleged smugglers have been arrested this year, according to the Attorney General's office. Images of soldiers posing with handcuffed suspects and stacks of decommissioned goods are splashed on state media. "We're going to get to the root of the problem," Mr. Maduro said in a national address last week after a shootout with smugglers in the frontier state of Táchira left 3 National Guard troops injured and pushed Venezuela to shut key border crossings. The smugglers targeted by the government crackdown are called bocaqueros, named after a leafcutter ant that can carry many times its weight. The word, first used here in the northwestern state of Zulia, has become part of daily national parlance as a label for Venezuelans who buy price-controlled goods and resell them for profit on the black market. While the government blames the shortages on bocaqueros, economists say they are the consequence of price controls and a broken economic model that has left average Venezuelans with diminishing employment options. "The people that used to give us work, the private companies, the rich have all gone," said Ms. Palma in La Cr, adding that she also occasionally traffics goods to get by. "It's not the greatest business, but we don't have work and we have to find a way to eat." Earlier this month, Venezuela's military raided homes and warehouse around the town, seizing tons of allegedly hoarded goods that were destined to leave Venezuela or be resold on the black market for well above the state-set price. Lisandro Uriana, who had a black eye and a bandaged leg, said he and 2 friends were badly beaten up when a neighbor's house was raided. "They didn't say or ask us anything," recalled the 46-year-old Wehua, father of 4, who lives in a tin-roofed house of 2 rooms. "They just beat us and we couldn't defend ourselves because they were armed and were many. I don't even smuggle, and now I can't even get up to work." The day of the raids, neighbors said residents pleaded with troops at the National Guard command post to distribute seized food to non-smugglers but were turned away. An angry mob soon formed, sending soldiers fleeing before they attacked the office and even stripped it of scrap metal. "These are just some isolated cases," Manuel Graterol, a National Guard general overseeing operations in La Sabuquera on a recent day, said, blaming the unrest and the Bacacuero phenomenon on opponents of Mr. Maduro's government. "Many of them are being shameless," said Gen. Graterol. "They're committing treason against our country, taking food and crossing the border." But such food fights have broken out in numerous small municipalities around the state of Zulia. In the nearby town of Sinamaca, the ground floor of the mayor's office was set on fire in early August following a wave of unrest that included gangs looting delivery trucks. The unrest, locals said, began after police detained a truck loaded with rice. Street vendor Robert Guzman, wearing a red pro-government t-shirt, said the sacking was justified. "We are very peaceful people," Mr. Guzman said of his Wehua community, "but what happened was an act of desperation. I think this is going to get worse." Resident Use Lady Marquez said she too fears the worst. The basket of subsidized food the government gives her mother every 15 days only feeds her family for 2 days. Lately, she only eats a cornmeal patty for lunch because she can't afford more. Basically, the main problem in Venezuela is basic human economy. Humans don't need paper or metals to buy food, shelter, commodities, etc. We just need, well, food, shelter and commodities. And since that's such a broad variety of things, we must find someone who can provide what we can't make or do ourselves. Since this person is not very likely to do it for free, we offer something in exchange, something they need. That's how economies began. If you wanted the potatoes I grew myself, then you had to give me something in return, something that had the same value as my potatoes. It wasn't very practical because it didn't allow a firm industry to develop, not when you had to go from town to town hoping to get some eggs in exchange of rice. Basically, the whole human dynamics are all about the exchange of goods and services. When societies became stronger and more stable, the idea of money came up. Money is merely a token of human effort. Money, in any of its forms, whether it's paper, gold, or credit, is a representation of the human effort and work that we need in order to obtain a service or a good. A $100 bill would be a worthless piece of paper if it weren't for the fact that it can lift enough interest to move enough human power to get you things. Simple. Like I said before, when societies became more organized, the possibility of a note having a value equivalent to human effort became possible. That's money, a note that says it can be exchanged for goods and services. The reason for this is that governments, large states, laws, and big populations began to exist, and that gave consistency and validity to this note, in the same way your government backs up every law that it creates. Without the human society keeping its value, any law would be worthless, just words on paper. Of course, in the beginning more rudimentary things were used as currency than the very modern notes. Things that people wanted really bad and were hard to get became a good way to measure things: cows, sheep, lands, silver, gold, you name. We began to simplify things and created golden and silver coins, with royal seals and whatnot. Everyone wanted gold, and the government/king was particularly fond of it. Which meant that if I had gold, someone would want it and I could obtain other things in exchange, like cows, sheep, or land. In time the governments replaced the hard-to-get gold and silver for simple pieces of paper with one promise written on it: this paper is worth. The implications of replacing gold for paper are a topic for anchor occasion. Throughout these many changes in history, one thing remained: offer and demand. In my example of potatoes, which apparently I grew myself, I said that if you wanted them you had to give me something in exchange, something of equal value. The funny thing here is that humans define the value of something, simply because we are the consumers. I would never give you my potatoes for more potatoes. I don't need potatoes and neither do you. In this case, I need something that, given the circumstances, has a value equivalent to that of my potatoes. And I define that. I've said potato a lot. So, here's when offer and demand comes in. If I'm the only person in town who has one potato, and you and the other neighbor want it, that gives me a position to ask more than what the potato is worth. Now, for practical purposes, let's say you grew 1 carrot, and that it more or less should be worth the same as mine potato, given we both worked the same on it. Makes sense. But turns out the other neighbor has 2 carrots. And he really wants that potato of mine. This is what will happen. You offer me 1 carrot. The neighbor offers me 1 carrot. Since both offers are equal, I ask for a tiebreaker, meaning more. The neighbor offers me 2 carrots, he gets the potato. In time, trends will be established, and average prices set. So you'll know 1 potato is worth 2 carrots, or 2 coins, you get the point. Of course, I might lose interest in carrots tomorrow, so 2 carrots won't make the deal for me. And since I'm the only one with potatoes, you'll have to offer me a more attractive deal than just 2 carrots, maybe 3,4? Alternatively, you might lose interest in potatoes, so if I want carrots I'll have to offer you a more attractive deal. These fluctuations are constantly happening in every economy in the planet. You could say it's a part of human nature. In a way, economies should balance themselves. Okay. So now we are fast forwarded to the modern world where governments use paper notes as a form of currency. Having the ability to print your own money gives you certain special powers that can be useful every now and then, such as the ability to bend the rules a bit and print some extra bills to pay some internal debt here and there, or to stimulate the growth. Not so bad. This same power can be a double-blade knife and could come back and cut you deep. Why? Offer and demand. Sometimes, governments are deep in debt, have public expending to meet, promises to fulfill, etc. Basically they desperately need money. If this government is smart, then it will accept that the pockets are empty and will find a way to bring more money into the ark. Simple. Why? You'll see. If said government isn't very smart, it will use its magic wand to print more money. At first it might seem that all debts have been paid. I owe public workers $100.000 Cr. Print them. I promised the general public a 50% raise of the minimum wage. Print them, no problem. On the short run, your public workers will have the $100.000 Cr you owed them, plus 50% more money in their paycheck. After all, you are printing all that, they can get it out of an ATM anytime. They will go out and spend that money. They will exchange it for goods and services, fast. Using the previous analogies, basically you were given 4 extra carrots. Yet I only have 1 potato. So this is what will happen. You offer me 1 carrot for my potato. Your neighbor offers me 2 carrots. You remember you got 4 extra carrots, so now you offer me 3. Since your neighbor can't beat that, you get the potato. Now a potato is worth 3 carrots. This is called inflation. If the money you print isn't backed up by services and goods out there in the market, people will keep bidding until they beat others and obtain what they need, prices will skyrocket and eventually your currency will be worth nothing. This is how printing money bites you back, and this is why it's such a delicate thing to do and why entire governments refrain from doing it, and monitor, through experts, how their economies are flowing and fluctuating. It's why they choose to say we got no more money, we need to raise taxes / sell the presidential house / ask for a loan, even though they could just print more money. It's worth noting that inflation in first world countries is usually below 2% annually. That's why if you live in one of these countries you pay pretty much the same for goods and services through the years, the currency is stable. Maduro's socialist government, which according to the latest poll by Dataanalysis is preferred by less than 20% of voters ahead of December 6 parliamentary elections. The critical situation threatens to plunge South America's largest oil exporter into a wave of civil unrest reminiscent of last year's nationwide demonstrations seeking Mr. Maduro's ouster. It's a national crisis, said Marco Ponce, head of the Venezuela. Venezuela hours after they looted and set fire to a National Guard command post in this sun-baked corner of Venezuela earlier this month, a mob infuriated by worsening food shortages rammed truck empty-handed at midday. In a national survey, the pollster Consultors 21 found 30% of Venezuelans eating 2 or fewer meals a day during the second quarter of this year, up from 20% in the first quarter. Around 70% of people in the study also said they had stopped buying some basic food item because it had become unavailable or too expensive. Food supply problems in Venezuela underscore the increasingly precarious situation for Mr. into the smoldering edifice, reducing it mostly to rubble. The incident was just one of numerous violent clashes that have flared in pockets around the country in recent weeks as Venezuelans wait for hours in long supermarket lines for basics like milk and rice. Shortages have made hunger a palpable concern for many Wayuu Indians who live here at the northern tip of Venezuela's 1,300-mile border with Colombia. Had been deployed to stem rampant food smuggling and price speculation, which President Nicolas Maduro blames for triple-digit inflation and scarcity. But after they seize contraband goods, the troops themselves often become targets of increasingly desperate people. What's certain is that we are going very hungry here and the children are suffering a lot, said Maria Palma, a 55-year-old grandmother who on a recent blistering hot day had been standing in line at the grocery store since 3 a.m. before walking away.